Evening, folks. Jimmy Cavanaugh here, joined by Adam Reinhart, coming to you from Assembly Hall after a 93-59 win over Jacksonville. IU goes to 12-1 in the non-conference and began Big Ten play at Iowa on December 31st. But first, Adam, IU plays Jacksonville, a mediocre team, not in the top 300 in the Ken Pomeroy ratings.
Not exactly.
They were not a top 300 team, objectively speaking, and first half of action was a little questionable. Jacksonville got some pretty good looks at the basket.
Yeah, but, we see this from IU all the time. They get off to a sloppy start, then they turn things on in the second half. Jacksonville, they were really playing like world beaters in the first half. They were playing almost like the 6th or 5th ranked team in the country. But the thing that really started to change things was a sequence with about, I'd say, 10 minutes to go in the first half, when IU got about 3 baskets in a row with some steals to accompany that. And that really got the crowd going and really shifted the momentum.
Yeah, Victor Oladipo was absolutely one of the main sparks for that, because Oladipo, during that stretch that you talked about, had a period where he forced a shot clock violation, and then the next time down the floor, defensive possession, spiked the shot out of bounds. Just the defensive effort he brought and the rest of the team brought was noticeably different from the first to the second half.
Oladipo was all over the court tonight. Not only was he draining threes left and right, he was playing good defense, forcing shot clock violations, getting steals, even going into the crowd at one point, which kind of got him a little banged up, but he did come back. He was definitely the MVP of tonight's game.
Yeah, Oladipo left right after that, and it kind of freaked both the fans and some of the media out, wondering exactly what happened when he went into the stands. But he was asked about it after the game. He is apparently fine. Just said that that's not a switch he can flip, that he can't turn that off, and mentioned that he's going to play that same way as we get into Big Ten Conference play.
Yeah,
as we go to that point, just looking at the energy and effort these guys play with, it's become somewhat of a calling card.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And they really seem to play with most of their energy in the second half, but it's still energy, and it gets the crowd going in a certain way, and they're going to have to really do it, not only do it, but do it more often in the game when they play Big Ten teams, because these Big Ten teams are not going to be like Jacksonville or Florida Atlantic or any other team they've had a somewhat slow start against. These are going to be really tough Big Ten teams.
Yeah, Jacksonville, again, it's worth mentioning, not a good basketball team coming into tonight's game. And there were some questions to be raised based on how Indiana played these guys tonight, especially just looking at the numbers from beyond the arc. Jacksonville shooting almost 60%, got plenty of good looks from deep, and that's been a tendency for this team to give up. There have been a couple questions on the defensive side of the ball that they've got to clean up.
Yeah, no doubt about that, and they certainly have to work on their shooting because, their shooting was not the best in the first half, and when they get into Big Ten play, as I said, they need to get off not to slow starts. They need to get off to really quick starts, because if they play like in the Big Ten season like they did tonight, they're going to fall behind pretty quickly, and they're going to have some pretty strong deficits. And some of them are going to be hard to make up if they're playing against, say, Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, Illinois, tough teams in the Big Ten. It's going to be a lot different. As I said earlier, we're used to these slow starts, but they can't go on much longer.
And it seems like this would be a good point to get to the strength of schedule that we've seen from IU. They have not played a true road game yet. They will go to Iowa City and open the Big Ten with a road game. Tom Crean mentioned this in his press conference, that they go to Iowa, they go to Northwestern before seeing the Assembly Hall hardwood again. And that's 2 pretty tough tests to begin the year. How much is the strength of schedule maybe stunted the growth of Indiana? And what can we expect looking forward as this team tries to deal with more talented opponents than they've faced thus far?
Well, obviously, we're going to see a few more losses than we've seen in the non-conference part of the season. Granted, they played North Carolina, they played Georgetown, and they played Georgia and Butler, but all those games were either on a neutral court or at home. We had the great atmosphere at North Carolina, but, if that game were in Chapel Hill, you're talking a much different story. And they're going to have to travel to Michigan. They're going to have to travel to Ohio State. They're going to have to travel to Michigan State, where they've not won since 1990. And, they're going to be in a lot more tough atmospheres, to say the least, because they basically lived and breathed right here in Assembly Hall. And not only that, but doing against a lot of schools that a lot of casual fans have never heard of.
Yeah, and Victor Oladipo, mentioned that after the game that they're getting ready to play in the toughest conference in America, bar none. And just looking at what you see from the opponents they've played thus far, they've struggled at playing up to the level of their competition when they play tougher teams because they've been playing squads that, as we've said, have not been quite as formidable, and that's going to change coming up here very soon.
Especially considering that they're going to be playing, against guys like Trey Burke of Michigan and other players, Gary Harris of Michigan State, and the list goes on and on. And when we see these tougher players, the competition level goes sky high, and that is obviously going to be a much different situation from what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and while we talk about some of the other players from around the Big Ten, formidable opponents for IU, we can go to Jordan Hulls, who had himself a pretty good game, showing opponents around the country that IU has some franchise players of their own. Hulls had an outstanding game tonight, outstanding from the floor, ball security, being able to distribute, just nothing that he wasn't able to do.
I even talked about Jordan Hulls during my video story, which you can see right here on IU Sport.com.
Shameless plug, folks. Check it out.
Exactly. And, leadership's going to be critical right here at IU and especially throughout the Big Ten, and he has it. And he needs to have more games like he had tonight if the Hoosiers are going to have success in the Big Ten this year.
Well, let's get to the Big Ten opener and just discuss that. Iowa is coming down the pipe. According to Ken Pomeroy's website, which I love, it's great numbers, great statistics. Iowa is going to be the third toughest opponent IU has played this year, and they're the 8th best team in the Big Ten. Just to put some perspective there, what can IU expect from Iowa going forward?
Well, they're obviously going to face a lot of fans that don't like them. And let's point out, though, Carver Hawkeye Arena is a really tough place to play. They've only won there once in the last several years, and that was in 2008, I think, when they had Eric Gordon. And, Iowa, in general, has really been a haunting place for the Hoosiers. Last year, Iowa was not that good. They didn't even make the NIT, but they absolutely destroyed the Hoosiers in Carver Hawkeye Arena. And my aunt certainly will be looking forward to that game. She lives in Iowa City, and she's a big Iowa Hawkeyes fan. She can't wait to rub the salt in the wounds. But it's going to be really interesting to see how IU responds to a completely different environment.
I thought you were going to say your aunt was going to provide one of the few friendly faces for the Hoosiers. I guess not. I suppose that's not going to be the case.
Nope, and she's from Princeton, Indiana, so you'd think she would, but she's not going to.
Turncoats. Awful. But just even looking at that, as you said, Iowa has been a house of horrors for Indiana, even dating back before Tom Crean got here. Kelvin Sampson, not with an outstanding record. Mike Davis either. Go back to the early 2000s. IU has struggled to play on the road at Carver Hawkeye, and really on the road, too.
Yeah.
IU was not great on the road last year, and that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
And, they did not win a road game in the Big Ten last year until they beat Purdue, which was in early February. Then they went to Minnesota and won, but other than that, they had some problems on the road. They lost to Nebraska, of all schools, on the road, and they did have a key signature win against NC State early in the season in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. But until last year, the only school Tom Crean had won a Big Ten game on the road against was Penn State.
And to be fair, IU did beat Penn State on the road in their second conference road game of the year. It's easy to forget about that.
It is.
Because Penn State is not that good of a team. So, maybe it shouldn't even count as a Big Ten road win. There are people who would argue that. And that they couldn't even beat Nebraska was something significant. As you said, that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Adam, any final thoughts before we close this baby up and head to Carver Hawkeye?
One more thing about Big Ten road games. It used to be that fans would storm the court right here at Assembly Hall when the Hoosiers won the games. We're going to see fans storm the court. It's going to be fans of the opposing teams when they beat the Hoosiers. I think the tide's changing. So, in a way, it's good to see. It does get irritating to see fans storm the court after beating us, but that's the way IU basketball should be.
And the best way to avoid that, win on the road.
You got it.
That's all the time we've got here. For Adam Reinhart, I'm Jimmy Cavanaugh from Assembly Hall, saying good night, travel well. Check us out next time. We'll have a video for you. We'll keep you updated on IU Sport.com. Thanks for watching, folks.